Okay. All right. So I start out and say I'm Dave Porterfield, and I work at Movin Out Incorporated. We're a statewide nonprofit organization that provides housing opportunities for targeted people that have various kinds of disabilities across the state of Wisconsin. And we've been around for a little over 25 years. And today we're going to talk to you about kind of the ways that we work with people, what we do, the mission of our organization, some of the accomplishments we've had over the years. And I will say that I'm not certain how long Hearthstone's been in existence, but almost as long, I think, because I know that I have talked to some of the people that years ago that originally helped to found Hearthstone in
Yeah,
Sheboygan,
Hearthstone's just
and
coming
knew
up on
something about that. So,
year, Dave.
pardon me?
I was just saying Hearthstone's coming up on 25 years this year.
That's what I thought. They're pretty similar in age. So, for both Catherine and my benefit, it might be helpful to have somebody from your side tell us a little bit about what your organization is about, and that might help us to focus the information we can convey to you. So, can someone do that just briefly?
Sure. Kathy, did you want to, or I can?
You can go for it. Or is,
Okay.
is Leia on too? She could too.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, so Hearthstone is an organization. We're based in Sheboygan, and we help people with disabilities. Normally we hold lots of social events throughout the year. We haven't been able to do that, unfortunately, because of COVID. So we've been trying to do some of these virtual events. But normally that's kind of our core focus is just trying to get people together, being able to build friendships and being able to socialize. And then we also hold educational events that are kind of focused on issues that are important to people with disabilities, or just general knowledge of different things. So we've been holding several of those virtually this year. This is kind of one of those. And then we also offer a scholarship to anyone seeking post-secondary education that has a disability. And then our third focus is around advocacy on trying to just be in the know and get information about disability rights. You're muted, Dave.
That's good background. Thank you. And that's helpful for us to kind of get a sense of where you guys are coming from. So, as I mentioned, we've been around for about 25 years, and Moving Out was established by a group of families who had children who were nearing adulthood with disabilities and were seeking housing solutions that were not commonly available at that time. Their vision was to have their sons or daughters be able to live in homes of their own, either that they purchased or that they rent, and to provide, I guess, what we'll call a separation between the supportive assist system and where someone lives, which 25 years ago was not as common as it is in some places now. And so from that beginning, the organization has gone on to expand. It started out with housing counseling to assist people to understand the home purchase process, and then to provide access to down payment assistance to be able to help people to purchase homes. And for the first 10 or so years of its existence, that's primarily what Moving Out did. And then about 15 years ago, the organization decided to also begin to develop, own, and operate rental housing that was an integrated housing model, which provides housing for people that's integrated into larger housing projects. Typically, no more than 20 or 25% of the apartments that are in a housing project that we develop are occupied by people with disabilities, with the balance being other people who just need affordable, good quality housing. And predominantly what's right now often called workforce housing for families that need a housing that's affordable and that are working families in the community that cannot find housing very easily because there's such a tight supply of housing. So that's in a nutshell what we've done. I have with me Catherine Auerbach, and she's our executive director, and she's got a PowerPoint that she can share about this and talk more about some of our background and our vision for the future and some of our accomplishments. I'm hoping you can see me. I mentioned that I am working remotely. I'm actually in Upper Michigan on the shores of Lake Superior right now. So I'm a long way, and I'm utilizing an iPad to transmit this. So hopefully if that starts to be a problem, I'll phone back in with my telephone.
Thanks, Dave. Thank you for inviting us to talk with your group this evening. If it's okay, I'll switch to presentation mode. I think I can do that from here.
Yeah, you should be able to.
All right. Can you see that slide?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so as Dave said, our organization is Movin Out, and we are celebrating our official 25th anniversary this year of our nonprofit status. And our organization is all about helping to create housing solutions for people and families with disabilities. And I just have a few slides to go through, but they'll, kind of help frame our discussion. And this is, in order for me to have this in presentation mode, it means I cannot see any of you right now. So I won't be able to tell if anybody's trying to signal me that they have a question or anything. So just feel free to jump in verbally if you have a question. Otherwise, I'm happy to answer more questions at the end of this deck.
I don't see a slide. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but I don't see a slide. Does everybody else see her slide?
I see pictures. Is that what you're showing, Catherine?
I'm only seeing myself. I see the other participants on the side.
Are you on your iPad, Kathy?
Yep.
You might have to do something different on the iPad to see the screen sharing. I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, I'll just listen. If everybody else can see it, just go ahead.
Catherine, is that what you're sharing right now as pictures?
You should be seeing a slide that, yes, has a picture of a woman sitting with a little dog on her lap, and the text on the screen is our mission statement.
Okay, we don't see the text. We see the picture, though.
You don't see the text. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, can't see it.
It might be zoomed in, maybe?
Oh, there we go.
There we
Yeah,
go.
so we're only seeing like the right half of the picture.
But now we can see it.
Now we can see it, though.
can see
Your
it.
whole PowerPoint. Yeah.
That's weird. Okay. Can you still see it okay now?
Yeah, it's getting bigger.
Oh, that looks really good.
That looks good.
Okay. Well, evidently in presentation mode, it doesn't work so great. So we'll just wing it. All right. So as Dave said, our mission is about partnering with people with disabilities and their families and their allies to create and sustain community integrated, safe, affordable homes. Our organization was founded on these guiding principles that remain really important to our organization and that really do drive all of our decisions about our programs and with regard to housing for people with disabilities. Number one is community integration. So our values around that mean that we do not work on any projects that segregate people in any ways or that congregate people in any way. So we're all about helping to build diverse, inclusive neighborhoods. Self-determination, I don't think I need to define what that means to this group, but that remains a really important component of our organization. And it guides, for example, the fact that we do not provide any supportive services in the housing that we develop. For example, we do collaborate with supportive service agencies to make sure that those services are available to our residents. But we feel like it's very important to keep those things separate so that the residents in our rental homes can make their own choices about whatever supportive services that they need. Again, partnership and collaboration. We have, from the very beginning, worked side by side with many, many other organizations to help create these opportunities. And if you're interested in hearing more about some of those, we can certainly get into that. But just for one very straightforward example, Dave talked about getting into developing multifamily rental properties. And we, for the first 10 or so years, did that primarily by partnering with other developers to get established in that arena. But we also, partner and collaborate with a variety of supportive service agencies and with the long-term care system overall, as well as with other affordable housing entities and agencies and organizations. Since we began as an organization, we have helped over 1,700 families to either become first-time homeowners or to maintain their homes for safety and accessibility for sort of aging in place and as needs change for families over the years, to help them to be able to stay in their homes for a very long time. So we're very proud of that. We've helped families in, I think, 70 of Wisconsin's 72 counties now, if not all 72 at this point. We are very proud of the fact that our housing counselors are HUD certified. This is a new certification that is only about a year old. And it basically, what it means is that our housing counselors have extensive training and have passed a rigorous exam. So their knowledge about home ownership and housing in general for people with disabilities is both deep and broad. And our housing counseling team includes housing counselors who have been with our organization for 20 years in one case, for over 13 years in another case. So they're very, very experienced in what they do, and they've been able to help many, many families with all kinds of questions related to housing and helping create tailored housing plans to help families create goals around housing and then help them achieve those goals. We collaborate with other organizations to provide home buyer education. As mentioned, we have contracts with many different organizations to provide down payment assistance. So that down payment assistance funding comes from various entities at state level, at the federal level, at the municipal level, the county level. Sometimes we get funding from sort of public-private organizations like the Federal Home Loan Bank of Chicago, for example. So we administer funds from a lot of different organizations that are interested in supporting home ownership. And our focus, of course, is on helping households that include someone with a permanent disability. And then, as I also mentioned, helping to finance and help coordinate safety and accessibility modifications. Our real estate development efforts have brought us to a total of almost 1,100 units of affordable rental housing that we've helped create throughout the state. And about a quarter of those are designated as supportive units for people with disabilities or households that include someone with a disability. And these are mostly in the southern half of the state, although we have, we're starting to stretch out into other corners of the state now, but most of these apartments are kind of along the line between Madison and Milwaukee, and we've recently opened new apartments in Platteville, and we have several other projects in the works in other parts of the state, in Wisconsin Dells, and we have some projects lined up for some communities farther north in the state, and so forth, in and around Milwaukee, and in between Madison and Milwaukee. So our rental properties include apartments as well as single family homes and duplexes and condos. And the apartments that we develop are typically what we call mixed income. And they are units that are set aside for people who are income qualified, that have household incomes between 30 and 80% of the county median income. So that CMI is the county median income rate. So that varies from one county to the next. The county median income in Dane County, for example, is going to be higher than some of the more rural counties, for example. So that's kind of place dependent. And it means that people at various income levels can all live in community together and build that kind of diverse, healthy community that we talked about. About 25% of the units, and really no more than 25% of the units, are supportive units for people with disabilities. That means that they are the most accessible and most affordable units. And then that last point that says resident success, that means that we work with our residents and their teams, as well as our property management partners, to help make sure that renters can remain in their apartments for as long as possible. So our aim really is housing stability. And so we have resident success program to help make sure that that happens. That extends into these areas of what we call community impact. So taking an asset-based community development approach, that means essentially that we're building on the strengths of the community and the gifts and talents of the people who live in the community to help create connections and opportunities for all of our residents, especially our residents that are people with disabilities, and building community and social capital to help further integrate all of our residents. So those are all the slides that I have, and that really is just a very kind of high level overview of all that we do. But happy to answer any questions that you have about any of that in particular, or other areas that you might be curious about.
Have you helped anybody in Sheboygan?
We don't have any rental properties in Sheboygan at this time, but we certain have helped quite a few people in Sheboygan County to purchase homes or to rehabilitate their homes so they could stay in them. I don't have a list of that with me, but I'm certain that that's true. And I'm certain that in some cases, people that may have been affiliated with HearthStone previously, or maybe still are, have probably utilized our services in some way or another previously.
So some of the barriers for a person with a disability owning their own home might be that they wouldn't know how to pay the taxes or keep up with maintenance. How do you help with that?
The thing we do in the housing counseling is, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
Say one of the things we do with the housing counseling is to help someone to make a plan about those very issues. And so that counseling is not just about the mechanism of buying a house, but it's a little more comprehensive than that, to account for if someone needs supportive services to be able to make sure that they're able to take care of the house and to sustain it over time, that we discuss that with them, their family, and their care team to make sure that there's a plan for doing that. And the budgeting is such that if they need some assistance to pay for maintenance and such going into the future, we help to plan for that as well. And so our success rate has been very high. Vast majority of people are successful in owning their home for a long period of time and don't have serious financial problems as a result of it, but not often at all.
So when they make a plan, in other words, you connect them with a plumber or electrician, but they would have to be able to have someone manage their money if they couldn't. I mean, I'm just thinking of all kinds of things that they might need help with besides just a plan, following up on that, being able to do it.
Yeah, often for instance, their family, or they might have a protective payee that's helping them to manage their money. And if there's a need to have, a maintenance plan for their home, we typically the homes are inspected prior to fairly, comprehensively to make sure that the home is going to be sustainable and they're not going to buy something that has a leaky roof or a bad furnace before they move into it. And then we can help them to identify a longer range plan to be able to financially plan for upcoming maintenance that they may need to be able to pay for. A lot of people end up buying condominiums if they need that situation, where a lot of that maintenance and that sort of thing are provided through the condominium association, but not all. There's all different kinds of situations, so it's very tailored to the individual.
What about equity in the home? Paying the rent happens with that equity if they do sell it, or if they pass away.
I wasn't able to hear that question. That whoever asked it was breaking up a little bit. Could you repeat that, please?
What happens to the equity in the home if they can't live there anymore? They've been paying rent and they want to sell it, or if they pass away, what happens to the equity from that home?
You want to speak to that, Dave?
Sure. I'll tell you what, typically the planning, if a family is concerned about that and you want to make sure you have a plan, we would try to refer people to some kind of longer term financial planning and, estate planning to make sure that they've thought that through, both for themselves and maybe for their families as well. So sometimes that's a fairly comprehensive plan that people need to have. But typically the home is titled in their name, so they're the owner of the home. So just like if you own your own home, it would be the same kind of plan essentially for you as well. So they would have to do some estate planning for what would happen to that in the future. I'll say one thing is that while the person is alive, the home as an asset doesn't count towards their the asset limitations that are required on a Medicaid. Medicaid is paying for supportive services. So that's an issue that we know how to navigate and help people to understand well. If a person passes away, that may be a different situation unless you've done some fairly comprehensive estate planning to avoid that situation. We don't do that, but we can connect you with people who do that.
Thank you.
I could say a little bit more about our rental housing that might be of interest. We're really excited about what we're doing now and kind of moving into the future with the organization. We're kind of at a very exciting growth state for the organization. We have projects now that are not only just providing housing, but also are mixed use projects, meaning that they in some cases have commercial space that are part of them in a downtown location, and some of that commercial space is space that would be of interest and helped in terms of providing inclusion for someone with a disability. So it's a good thing to work with. So an example of one of those is we're doing a project with a nonprofit early childhood center in Madison to provide. They provide some of the people that they support in their childhood center are young children with disabilities, so in an integrated fashion. So we fit together quite well. We've talked about helping to create possibly some employment or volunteer opportunities for people with disabilities in that setting. It's a number of ways that we can try to leverage off of that. Another project that we have in the works right now is a project which is also a mixed-use project, and it has a grocery store on the ground floor, and that's in the south side of Madison. And it will, I think, provide, first of all, close proximity to healthy food and that sort of thing, and secondly, possible employment opportunities for people. That's the thing that we're really trying to do, is generate as much positive impact in the community as we can when we do a project like this. These projects are fairly complex and take a fair amount of time to plan, and so we want to maximize the impact in the community and make sure that our target population, the people with disabilities, benefit from that extra work that we're putting in. So we're open to those kinds, and those are partnerships with other organizations that we're working to develop. So one thing that I don't know if you know these people, but they're nearby you. I've met several times the people in Port Washington, and their vision is to do something like that themselves. Also, they're interested in having us develop a project nearby in the suburb of Port Washington, where they're but they deliberately want to include people with disabilities in that through it's an affiliation with a nonprofit entity called Mel's Charities. I don't know if you're familiar with them or not, but they've raised money to provide services and some of the similar things that you're doing, but in the Port Washington area.
So I have kind of a roundabout question. What would one of these be without a roundabout question? But so what if, there are a couple of young adults, friends, that would like to maybe rent an apartment together. Both of them are disabled, or maybe even purchase a home. Is that something that's advised, or do you help with that type of arrangement as well?
The short answer is yes. We've done a lot of those where people want to have a roommate or friends that want to be together and either own a home or to rent a home, and we've done both quite a bit of time. In those cases, we definitely have to work closely with the family and with the support services agency to make sure that that's going to be all coordinated for them. We don't, as we said earlier, we don't provide those kind of services, and so there's a fair amount of planning that goes into that. And I can say that over time, some of those, people change over time and they want to move, and we've able to help people to navigate that and find a new roommate or have the person move out and live by themselves. A whole range of different kinds of situations that have occurred over time. All of this, I will say, takes a fair amount of time. There's a lot of planning involved, with the families for purchasing a home, and certainly planning these multifamily housing projects to make sure that they're going to be well received in the neighborhood and well received by the community. And I guess I would have to say we have very strong community support as a result of that. And if you ever get the chance, and when the pandemic has passed, hopefully, you want to visit one of our projects, we'd be happy to give you a tour so you can kind of get a sense of what we're talking about. But they're, in many cases, a very, very, they're very high quality housing and a very, powerful impact on the people that live there.
Mm-hmm. And so, what happened, or how do you help in a situation where maybe I'm the one who's moving out, and Eric might stay in this house, or if something happens to me and I'm no longer living in this home, and Eric has this big house to be living in and to take care of. Do you help with that as well? That transition of staying in the home and arranging for any kind of student housing counseling as well?
We have done that in the past, yes. So we've helped people. It's a fairly complicated, and I would say that often the long-range plan it may be wiser to do something different than the house you're in, but not always. It just depends on the situation. So, but we have done that where a family basically gave their house to their child to be able to stay living there. And we, in that case, now one of the one that I'm familiar with, they gave it to us, and we own and operate it on their behalf. So we also do that, so that you know, they don't have to worry about it into the future. We do all the maintenance and take care of everything. That's the one that I can think of. But I wouldn't be surprised if we've also helped people to basically, quote unquote, acquire the house from their family to be able to live there. So we can structure those kind of transactions through our housing counseling. So let me ask you a couple of questions. What do you think the future vision for HearthStone's members are for around housing? Is there much talk about that? Is that something that people are, you know, focusing on? Is that is there an interest? You know, I will say that, you know, as I mentioned, there's a lot of planning that goes into when we go into a community, and often that starts with conversations like this, and then evolves into something that eventually turns into, you know, actual housing, a project, or a plan to help a series of families to help their children to purchase homes and things like that. Is that something that's of interest?
I don't have a handle on all the members as much as maybe Leah or Alex, but it seems like there are a lot of people still living with their families. And I don't know if they've made plans or not for when that's not possible. There are many members already who are in apartments. There's a couple, I think, who their parents have purchased a home for them, but I would be concerned about how they would manage after their parents are no longer able to help them.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think we have
Yes.
any like stats or anything, Kathy, on on what our member situations are.
But a lot of the children's addresses do match up to their parents', so I think the majority are living with their family.
Right, and then the demographics also, you know, I wouldn't venture to say what the average age is of our members. You know, we did about a year ago or so, we had an educational event called What Happens When, and, you know, dealing, you know, with siblings involved, you know, how does a sibling of a disabled person deal with the next step? And so, you know, this might be a good discussion to have, you know, as a follow-up to what happens when.
I really
Sure.
I would think it would be of interest of a lot of people, but I think, again, doing things virtually just is not as popular.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. So we're all waiting for this to be resolved somehow.
Right.
Yeah, I would think maybe it would be a good idea, Kathy, to maybe try to earmark a time next year, if hopefully we can, you know, do in-person events next year sometime, to have maybe a educational event or something on it.
Right.
In person, because then we usually get more people at the in-person events.
Right.
Yeah, we'd be happy to do that.
How does your organization get paid? How do you, where's your funding from?
We have a kind of a mix of funding that helps make us sustainable. So we don't have kind of all our eggs in one proverbial basket, right? So we have some of the majority of our funding comes from fees that we earn for the services that we provide. So, for example, we have a contract with HUD to provide housing counseling services. We have contracts with other government agencies, and like I said, the funds that we administer for the down payment assistance, for example, we earn a small fee on the closing transactions So the people that receive our housing counseling services do not pay directly for those services. They're paid through these other sources. We earn some fees when we develop multifamily properties, and we earn some fees for various aspects of owning and operating those properties. We have to fill gaps with fundraising and other grants. So those fees that we earn don't cover all of our costs. So we have to also do fundraising and write grants and so forth. So it's a mix of philanthropy, grants, and fees that we earn. But again, the people that receive our services do not pay directly for them.
Yeah, and we're a relatively small organization. I mean, we have what, 9 staff now? Is that right, Catherine? 9?
We're at 10.
10. Okay.
We're hiring 2 more people yet this year, so we'll be up to 12. And we've kind of been in some ways in a holding pattern during this pandemic, because it does create a lot of uncertainty for everybody. And the housing market, there's a lot of uncertainty in the economy. And so we're in a little bit of a holding pattern in some respects, but for the most part, we've been continuing to pursue all of our strategic goals that we set for ourselves this year. As Dave said, we're kind of leaping forward into the next phase of our organization's growth and development to expand the rental property development into farther corners of the state and explore other kinds of ways that we can offer different kinds of housing. We want to be able to meet people's housing needs, whether, no matter what kind of home is right for them. And right now we're kind of limited to, multifamily apartment buildings or single family homes. And there are a lot of things kind of in between there that we don't yet offer, that we're hoping to explore.
So Dave, you had mentioned that, it takes a while to set all of this up. And so I'm wondering what a while is. And then I'm also wondering, how can we prepare our young adults for living on their own?
Well, in terms of a while, it depends on what you're trying to do. For home ownership, our program, that's an ongoing program, so that's available on demand when you're ready for it. But I would say it's not uncommon for someone who wants to purchase a home and going through to make a good plan and to spend their time, etc., make sure everything is there, a year or more to be able to go through all that process and maybe resolve some issues and solve a problem or two that they may have that they want to solve before they do that. And for the rental project, that typically takes between 2.5 and 3 years to plan and then execute, develop a project, and have it ready for people to move into. So that's a longer range planning process. There, we use a variety of different sources of financing for that, and some of those are on a calendar basis where you have to apply at specific times of the year to get them, and you have to go through a lot of other planning processes to get all the permits and the required entitlements to be allowed to do that and to assemble all the financing to do it and then actually construct it. So that's a little bit longer term planning. And then in terms of providing assistance about helping your family member to think about it, I think the counseling is the best avenue. From where we are now, we can provide that counseling from a distance. We do that over the phone, internet, etc. So that's what we've done the whole time. So it's not new for us. And I think that that would be helpful to just to begin to talk about that with our housing counselors, and they can figure out, okay, here's where you're at now, and here's some of the steps you got to start thinking about to do this, which is how I think it typically goes.
So is there an application process to do this, and are people ever denied?
Go ahead, Catherine.
So you don't have to apply to talk with a housing counselor. Anyone can talk with our housing counselors. If you're interested in down payment assistance or financial assistance for home repairs for safety and accessibility, or you're interested in renting a property from us, then there's an application process, and that involves essentially, the income qualification and the documentation of permanent disability. But there's no the only reason anybody would not would not be able to get assistance is if they were over income, for example, or if we did not have funding available in a certain community. Sometimes the funding that we have available is kind of dependent on location, and it varies from year to year in terms of what organizations provide, what agencies we get funding from, and how much, and so forth. So assuming that there were funds available in the area that you were interested in purchasing a home, and assuming that just like anybody else purchasing a home, the person does have to get a first mortgage and qualify, so there's credit and all of that involved that our housing counselors would work with people on. But if someone is otherwise qualified to purchase the home and they're just trying to get the down payment assistance, then that's a pretty straightforward process. But the housing counseling, any sort of information and referrals, or just working with a housing counselor, there's no application process for that. It's just a pretty basic intake process.
We can also help people if their family wants to provide direct support to them, financial support to help with the purchase of the home. We can help to make sure that they do that in a fashion that's not going to threaten their qualification for their services, etc. So we've done that a lot of times, and so it may be the situation where we can help them to use a little bit of extra money that the family provides to leverage to get them a better house, or that sort of thing.
Now you're connected with Inclusive somehow, because they were the ones who referred us to you. How do you help them, or how you do different things than they do, I suppose?
Yeah, Inclusive is a managed care organization, so they're kind of like an insurance company, kind of like an HMO almost, right? Except they're paying for different services. And we coordinate with managed care organizations to help make sure that supportive services are available in the communities where we're working. So we partnered with them, for example, when we were working on a new apartment development in Platteville, Wisconsin, because there weren't really there wasn't really this model in that part of the state before we went into that community. So the options for supportive services were pretty limited. So we coordinated with them as the payer, along with the supportive service provider, to go into that market to make sure that was in place. So that's the kind of coordination that we do with organizations like that. We're not affiliated with them in any financial sense.
Yeah, they also provide referrals through their agencies that they contract with for people to either purchase homes or to rent apartments that we own.
Okay. It was very interesting. I'm glad that we're able to record it, and hopefully if people can get on after a while and watch it at their own convenience, that will be helpful.
Good. Well, we're really happy that you invited us to do this, and it's great to reconnect with HearthStone after so many years. Kind of, been along this, going down the same path in different, together in a way. So it's interesting to have two organizations that are about the same age, 25 years, and doing what we've been doing for a long time. So congratulations to you for sticking it out for all that time as well.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, good evening. Bye-bye.
You too. You too.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.